Savers in Cyprus add up how much they're set to lose to help save the country's economy. Fears of contagion across the rest of the EU have seen some turn away from the banks in a bid to keep their cash safe. In places like Spain and Greece, an online currency known as Bitcoin is gaining popularity, with its value soaring to £500 million in the last few weeks. Siobhan Robbins reports.
People are getting nervous. The raid on Cypriot bank accounts has left some across Europe asking who they can trust with their money.
Yeah, so this is our lounge, where we hang about. We've got our sofas and our wonderful plants.
Amir Taki is helping to promote an alternative. From South London's squats, he's been giving people in the UK access to Bitcoin, the world's fastest growing currency.
It's the first time we have virtual currency which is not controlled by any central party. There's no central bank, no central authority. Everybody that participates in the network is upholding the network. It's not some theoretical concept. It's $1 billion market with charts and graphs and everything. It's here now, it's working, people are using it.
Bitcoins are basically virtual money which can be earned or bought. There are no banks to control them. People just exchange them directly with each other over the internet. That makes them difficult to tax or trace. Bitcoin's now worth more than £500 million. In the future, it's claimed we'll be getting bitcoins rather than cash out of ATMs, and they're already being used to pay for services around the world.
Bitcoin is changing finance the same way the web changed publishing.
Although it's accepted by legal businesses, it's also been used for shady purposes, with some abusing the virtually untraceable system to sell drugs. And that's not the only concern.
You struggle to find, apart from the extremes of maybe Zimbabwe, a currency more unstable than the Bitcoin.
The rapid rise in value has tempted many in cash-strapped countries like Spain and Greece to invest. But some experts warn the boom can't last. How safe would it be for them to invest in Bitcoin instead?
Totally unsafe. They might as well just burn their money in a pile, as far as I'm concerned. Yes, Bitcoin has nearly doubled in value over the last month, but that has every sign of being a bubble.
With that said, does this have a future as a legitimate currency?
I don't see Bitcoin as a fad at all. I think that it's a secure form of storing wealth. And I believe personally that it's more secure than gold or silver.
So despite the concerns, Bitcoin supporters say it's on the up, waging an online war against bankers and governments controlling our money. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News.
Well, let's talk now to journalist Awa Mahdawi, who's been closely following the rise of Bitcoin across the world. And Awa, given that this is a virtual currency, it's completely unregulated and, as we've been hearing, is valued at around £500 million. Can it really be taken seriously as an alternate currency?
Well, I think there's probably two things to bear in mind. And the first is that, to some degree, all currencies that we use are virtual currencies, because a piece of paper has no inherent value. We're putting our trust into banks and into central authorities to regulate it and to determine that value. The difference with Bitcoin is that it's regulated by a network. So there is some degree of regulation, but it's not a central authority, and that is the key difference. And I think, what that means is is a sort of decentralization of trust. So the trust that you're placing in that in every exchange with a Bitcoin is in other people rather than the government. And as trust in governments dip, I think we're seeing, interest in Bitcoins obviously soar.
Oh, it's an interesting point, because as you say, the trust levels in sort of centralised banks have really fallen recently. But can you really replace that trust in a sort of alternate currency that has this kind of shady past and links with drugs, for example?
Yeah, Bitcoin definitely has a shady past because it's an anonymous currency, and that's attracted sort of unsavory types, and it's mainly used on Silk Road, for example, a sort of Amazon.com of drugs. That's where a lot of the press from it has come. But it's really been gaining legitimacy massively in the last few months. And there's a lot of mainstream sites that use it and accept it. WordPress accepts it. There are even some rumors that OkCupid might accept it. If you think like a massive dating site might accept Bitcoin, that really speaks to its kind of a legitimate sort of acceptance going up.
When we look at the situation that's been unfolding in recent weeks in Cyprus, how could bitcoins have helped us to avoid this kind of situation?
Well, I think the bitcoins aren't, they're not pinpointed towards any one government's sort of financial crises. So if one sort of isolated area has political issues, it's not going to upset the whole of Bitcoin. And so it's sort of safe from the kind of geopolitical situation to some degree. Not entire. It's sort of like gold in that, there's a finite amount of it, and it's not pegged to sort of ups and downs in politics.
Some people still view it as this Ponzi scheme, funny money. How do we know that it's not? How can we trust it?
Well, I think the problem with Bitcoin is that it's very, very complicated to kind of explain exactly what it is. Very few people really understand how it works. Then if you think about it, not that many people on the street could actually tell you how, dollars or pounds work. There's very few people kind of understand the machinations of the financial system that kind of go on behind every transaction that they do. And so I think what it is it just takes time for people to get used to this idea of a virtual currency. And we're seeing, when the internet first started, people were worried about buying things online. Now everyone buys things online every day. When Facebook started, people were like, do we really, are people really going to talk to each other in that way? And now Facebook is part of our lives. So it's just going to become gradually accepted, I think, that virtual currency is going to seep into the financial system. And it might not be Bitcoin itself, but something like Bitcoin certainly represents the future of money, I think.
Okay, Arwa Mahdawi, thank you very much for joining us this lunchtime.
Thank you.